So here's a huge question. Is your future already written in your DNA the moment you're born? Or are you a blank slate, shaped entirely by the world around you? This is the heart of the nature versus nurture debate. For centuries, people saw it as an either or choice. But as we're about to see, the real answer? Well, it's way more fascinating than that. Just listen to this incredibly bold claim from psychologist J.B. Watson back in 1928. It perfectly captures that extreme nurture side of the argument. He basically believed that with total control over the environment, he could turn any baby into anything he wanted. Now, this wasn't just some wild idea that came out of nowhere. It was actually the peak of a philosophical fight that had been going on for a very long time. And this right here is the historical battleground. In one corner, you had thinkers like René Descartes. He argued that we're born with certain ideas and instincts already baked in. And in the other corner, you had John Locke, who famously said the mind is a tabula rasa, a blank slate, just waiting for experience to write on it. For centuries, you pretty much had to pick a side. All right, so let's dig into this enduring question. We'll start with the idea that most of us kind of grew up believing that how we're raised is the most important thing that makes us who we are. But is it really? You know, this idea even has a name, thanks to researcher Judith Harris. She called it the nurture assumption. It's that gut feeling that parents are the main artists sculpting their kids' personalities. It just seems so obvious, right? But what if the actual science, the data, tells a totally different story? You know, nature has actually given us the perfect natural experiment to test this: identical twins. They share 100% of their DNA. So when scientists tracked down twins who were separated at birth and raised in completely different families, they found something absolutely mind-blowing. Their personalities, their quirks, their tastes, their fears were incredibly similar. And this just flies in the face of that whole nurture assumption. Okay, so to flip this whole experiment on its head, researchers also looked at what they call virtual twins. Now, these aren't biological twins at all. They're genetically unrelated kids who are adopted and raised together in the same home. They share the same parents, the same rules, the same nurture, but zero genes. This leads to the perfect question, right? If the environment is really the main sculptor, then these virtual twins should grow up to have super similar personalities. You'd think so, wouldn't you? Well, the research is just shockingly clear. Nope. As adults, virtual twins are barely more alike in personality than any two people you might pick at random off the street. And that tells us something really profound. The family environment that you share with your siblings seems to have a surprisingly small effect on the core of who you become. Okay, so hold on. If nurture isn't the whole story, does that mean we're just robots controlled by our genes? That our fate is sealed? Well, let's bust that myth right now. This is honestly one of the biggest misconceptions out there. The idea that if some trait is heritable, it's basically set in stone. It's a kind of genetic fatalism. But it's totally based on a misunderstanding of what that word, heritability, actually means. See, heritability isn't really about you as one person. It's a statistic about a whole population. Imagine a forest full of trees. Heritability helps us understand how much of the difference in their heights comes from their different genetic seeds versus how much comes from some trees getting more sun or water. It says absolutely nothing about whether you could take one of those trees and make it grow taller with some extra fertilizer. And there's one real-world medical condition that just completely shatters this myth. It's called phenylketonuria, or PKU for short. So PKU is 100% heritable, no question about it. If you've got the genes, you've got the condition. And if you leave it untreated, it leads to some very serious problems with brain development. But get this. The fix isn't some high-tech gene therapy. It's totally environmental. By simply changing a person's diet to avoid one specific substance, the harmful effects can be completely prevented. Think about that. A 100% heritable condition totally neutralized by nurture. So we've kind of knocked down both of the extreme ideas, right? It's not all nature and it's not all nurture. Because it turns out the real story is much cooler. It's not a battle at all. It's a duet. Yeah. Today, pretty much no scientist sees this as a versus situation. It's a constant dynamic dance between the two. Our genes and our environment are in this continuous conversation from the second we're conceived. Asking which one is more important, it's like asking what's more important for the area of a rectangle, the length or the width. It's a silly question. You need both. Both are 100% essential. The diathesis stress model in mental health shows this perfectly. So picture this.
You might inherit a genetic vulnerability. They call it a diathesis for something like schizophrenia. But that doesn't mean you're destined to develop it. That vulnerability might just lie dormant. It often takes a major environmental stressor, like severe trauma or hardship, to actually flip that genetic switch on. One without the other often isn't enough.
So if you take one thing away, let it be this. Your genes aren't some rigid destiny. They're more like a blueprint for a building. But all of your life experiences, your environment, the choices you make, those are the chisel marks that decide what the final sculpture actually looks like. Okay, so what does all this actually mean for us in our lives? Well, understanding this duet is, honestly, it's really empowering. Just think about this amazing quote from climate activist Greta Thunberg. She talks about her Asperger's not as a deficit, but as a superpower, but only when the circumstances are right. This is that new perspective in action, right here. Conditions like autism aren't just a list of problems to be solved. They represent a different way of being. In an environment that actually values things like deep, intense focus and a powerful sense of justice, the very traits of autism can become incredible strengths. It all comes down to that interaction, the person and the environment they're in. So this is really the bottom line. Our genes do not lock us onto one single path. They give us tendencies, predispositions, but the world we build for ourselves and for each other, the support we provide, the opportunities we create, that has a huge impact on how those genes get expressed. The point is, we have agency here. What we do matters. So if our lives really are this duet between our genetic inheritance and the world we experience, it leaves us with one big, beautiful question. What kind of music will we choose to make?